Well, hi guys. Coach Jerry here at the Protocol Strength and Conditioning in Tucson, Arizona, and welcome to Coach's Corner. Today, we're going to be talking about the kettlebell press. This is an awesome skill for a wide variety of reasons, but the main thing is your shoulders do not move the way those machines at the big gym suggest. There's nothing about this ball and socket that suggests linear movement. I have a bad shoulder. If I try to pop my hands up like so and move straight up and down, I can actually feel the crunch in my shoulder. But if I could just groove my shoulder in more of a semicircle, most of that crunch goes away. So that's kind of the neat thing about the press. Before we get into today's actual press cues, I want to mention something that's very important. In our gym, we have what we call press probation. In other words, you're not allowed to press anything in this gym that you cannot stabilize. So when people go through their private instruction, when they're getting ready to get into our semi-private training sessions, they go through stability mechanics first. Now, it's beyond the scope of today's video, but I want to mention it because it is important. The two exercises are the Turkish get-up and the arm bar. If you're really good at the Turkish get-up, you can use that as your guide. Otherwise, you can use the arm bar, but both of those exercises are great. You can find a Turkish get-up video on our YouTube channel. You can also find the kettlebell arm bar exercise is all over YouTube. So I'm not going to waste any time on that today, but I will say it's very important to make sure that before you press a weight, you want to make sure that your shoulder has the stability mechanics necessary so that weight is not wiggling around on you. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're going to talk about today is groove. Groove is basically the pattern that your shoulder wants to take when you're pressing a kettlebell. Now, of course, I'm a biased source of information. I love kettlebells. There's something about the offset center of gravity and how the kettlebell is built to where I think it makes it a superior tool to learn press mechanics. And over the course of this video, we're going to explain why. But before we do that, I feel like I should tell you guys a good Russian joke. For those of you who have been following the channel, you may have heard this before or not. I'm a Soviet immigrant. I don't have much of the accent because I was really young when I came here, but part of my sense of sarcasm that I have in the gym comes from my Soviet upbringing, so I'll just start by telling you guys a good Russian joke. It's the one about the American that has his first experience going to the Russian grocery store. So the Russian grocery stores are nothing like the way they are here. There's usually a line outside. It's typically cold. And you have to wait in line, and there's a clerk up front, and you tell them what you want, and they bring it out to you. You don't go browsing around trying to pick out the best apples. So the American waits his turn. He finally gets to the front of the line, and the store clerk recognizes the American as an American, and right away he's on his best behavior. Instead of being rude like he is to the other customers, he says, "Well, yes, sir. What can we get for you, sir?" And the American goes, "Yeah, I'd like to get some coffee. What are my options?" And the store clerk looks at him kind of puzzled and says, "Well, sir, your options are coffee or no coffee." I should have mentioned that none of these Russian jokes are funny. But the reason I'm telling you that joke is because when it comes to pressing, you've got machines that are fixed. You also have the barbell. Again, fixed bar. Your options are to hold the bar the only way you can really hold it and put it up over your head. Your only other option is to not press it and take your gym bag and go home. So the barbell is kind of like the Russian grocery store, coffee or no coffee. The kettlebell is a lot like the American grocery store. You may press a kettlebell and have espresso. You may have Sumatra. You may have a French roast. However your shoulder is built and or maybe there's some issues or injuries in the past, no matter what no matter how the mechanics of your shoulder likes to move, there is a kettlebell path that works for you. Now, there's certainly some rules that we'll get into, but that's kind of the neat thing about what makes kettlebells so unique to pressing. Also, if you've had an injury, you may have French roast over here and Sumatra over here, which is entirely possible. We see that in here all the time. So when we're talking about groove, let's go ahead and break down some of these mechanics. The first one is an analogy that I learned from Brett Jones. He calls it the rocket booster. You want to imagine your forearm is a rocket ship and the booster is down here at the bottom. If you have your if your rocket is pointing straight up and down, the booster is going to shoot the energy down and you'll go straight up. And that is the position that you always want to have. I've also heard this explained as you want to imagine that your elbow is doing the pressing and not your fist. So if I were to do this as I start to press, my rocket booster is now shooting this way and it's going to make my arm do something sketchy going that way. If I go out too much, well, first of all, with the kettlebell, it's going to hurt, but the rocket booster is now pointing in a weird direction. You always want to make sure during the duration of the press that the rocket booster is always pushing down. So again, whether it's French roast, Sumatra, wherever you're at here, you always have your rocket booster pointing straight down. Another way to find your press groove is to think about how you pull your kettlebell down. Now, this serves multiple benefits. Number one, it's going to really help you figure out how your shoulder likes to work, but also it's going to teach you how to load the lats. So in order to do that, this is what it looks like. You press a bell that is fairly heavy for you. You may even find one that's almost too heavy for you, where you have to use both hands or do a push press. So when you're up here, we're going to actively pull the bell down, like gravity almost reversed itself, and I'm doing like a one-arm pull-up. The way that I pull that kettlebell down is typically the way that my shoulder is going to like to do it. And hopefully the camera, in the camera angle, you can catch it. My up and my down look very, very similar. The second neat thing about this is if I'm actively pulling the kettlebell down, what's going to happen is it's going to load down my lat. With my lat preloaded, let's say I'm doing this for a set of multiple reps. All I have to do now that I'm loaded up is just rebreathe and put the next rep up. I don't have to worry about, like if you were to let the kettlebell like just fall into the position, you have to repressurize and get your tension back. If you have an active negative, it makes those multiple reps a whole lot easier. Another great way to find your press groove is to do what's called the bottoms-up press. The bottoms-up press is done with a smaller kettlebell. So I've got a kettlebell that's exactly half the size of the one that I'm demonstrating with. I'm demonstrating with a 24K, which is kind of the standard for gentlemen. So I've got a 12K here to demonstrate the bottoms-up press. I'm going to take a grip that is dead center. Now, this is going to be really hard to show on the camera. So what I'm going to do instead is imagine I had a pair of equally sized kettlebells, and I was going to do some push-ups on my kettlebells. So if you do push-ups on kettlebells, the place that you end up holding the handle of the bell, that spot in your hand is the spot that you want to be in for a bottoms-up press. So that should give you enough to start with here. So I'm going to get my grip in that exact same spot, and I'm going to pull the bell up into what we call the bottoms-up position. Again, we have that rocket booster pointing straight down. I've got a straight line here from the ball to the handle to my fist to my elbow. If I press this kettlebell in any way that was wonky, like I lost my alignment, I'm going to lose it. So on that one, I flared my elbow a little too much. If I flare my hand out too much, I'm going to lose the bell the other way. So the bottoms-up press is another really, really good educational tool for finding your optimal press groove. So now that we have our press groove figured out, now we need to talk about the other important thing, which is body tension. This is something that we speak a lot of in this system. I remember I first learned this from my very first Strong First certification. They said you cannot shoot a cannon off a canoe. And the instructor that I had back then said, well, actually you can shoot a cannon off a canoe once. So if I'm loose through the middle of my body, any kettlebell that I try to press is going to feel heavy to me. In other words, you need a sturdy, sturdy base of support. One of the most common things, like if someone's in here trying to do a press test, like they're trying to get a new PR kettlebell press, one of the most common reasons that we have to no-rep somebody is they unlock their knees. Sometimes we do it not even realizing we're doing it, just because it's so heavy and you're thinking, I got to get this over my head and I got to get it going, and they end up kind of quickly unlocking their knees and producing a push press. So if it's a push press, obviously that doesn't count as a strict press. So how do we prevent that? If you stand with me and flex both of your quads, like someone's going to try to poke you in the quads and you want to really show off your quad muscles. If you squeeze your quads really, really hard, you should also automatically tense your glutes. If your glutes did not automatically tense, shame on you. There's a physical therapy joke about that called gluteal amnesia. It's exactly what it sounds like it is. When you flex your quads, your glutes should automatically kick on. So if you got your quads on and your glutes on, next you're going to try to grab the floor with your toes. What that does is it engages the lower half of your body and gives you that sturdy base to press off of. So you're not shooting a cannon off a canoe. Not shooting a cannon off a canoe. So with this tension that you have through your quads, not only does it make the press easier, but it keeps you from unlocking your knees, because as soon as you unlock your knees, you're going to lose your quad flexion. So that's one of the simplest ways through the lower half of the body to prevent the push press, but also generate a lot of body tension. The next drill that we're going to be practicing today is what Coach Wally calls the magic water bottle. This was one of the cues that he learned through our system a while back, and he got a hold of that cue and he made it his own. So we've never referred to it as the magic water bottle, but now that he's come up with that, that's what we're calling it now. So the way the magic bottle works is we talked about generating tension through the lower half of our body with the quads and the glutes and grabbing the floor with our toes. Now we got to talk about closing the tension gap in the upper body. Obviously, that breath that you hear me using is driving pressure through the abs, but there are some times when somebody's pressing a kettlebell and they have all their body tension and it still doesn't quite want to go. There's still just that, it's just too heavy. And the way the water bottle works is you get one of these little cheap plastic water bottles and you pretty much squeeze it like you're trying to get the cap to pop off. Now, we don't have anybody here with strong enough grip to actually physically get the cap to pop off. It'd be pretty awesome if I did it on this video, but I'm not hoping for anything here. So you would have the water bottle in your non-pressing hand, and you would just hold it out. You'd pull your bell up into the clean position. When you take your breath and tense everything up, at the same time you do that, right before ignition and takeoff, you crush the bottle. So I don't know if the microphone will pick up the sound of the bottle, but essentially it's going to look like this. I don't know if the camera caught that or not, but I was going to talk about it later in the video, but I'm just going to talk about it really quick right now. If you catch a bad clean, especially if you're going for a really heavy set of presses, you are much better off parking the bell, setting it down, shaking it out, and doing it again. You will not have a good press from a bad clean. A bad clean is going to be a bad press. So I think I distracted myself with the water bottle here, but let's try that one more time. There we go. And right away, by crushing that bottle, it closes up all that upper body tension and just gives you that little extra oomph. And for a lot of people, it's the difference between not hitting a new PR and hitting a new PR. So if you tried this in your training and it works, you're welcome. Now that we've covered the two most important things, body tension and groove, I want to talk about how to correct some common errors in the press. The first one is the obvious one. It's the same thing we learn when we do any other shoulder work, and this is an old physical therapy joke, which is your ear is shoulder poison. So what does your ear is shoulder poison mean? If I'm pressing, again, this is another one I heard from Brett Jones. I'm going to use the light kettlebell because if I did it wrong with the 24K, it's going to hurt. He calls it good position, bad position. So this would be considered a good position. My shoulder is packed, my elbow is straight. The kettlebell, like if I stuck my pinky in the air, you could almost draw a straight line from my pinky to my ankle. This is a great locked out position. A bad position would look like this. If I shrugged up my shoulder and my shoulder is now touching my ear and my ear is shoulder poison, I'm in a bad position. What's happening there is I have an overactive trap and an underactive lat. And if you try to press a kettlebell by shrugging it first, it's not going to feel good. A good press has a very drawn-in shoulder through that entire range of motion. Another good way that I've heard this explained is imagine I was a lot taller. For those of you who haven't met me in real life, I'm 4'11". That's only slightly a joke. Let's say I was really tall and I was in a doorway of like a conventional height door and I was here and I was trying to push into the doorway. Like I was trying to break the molding off the doorway, let's say. If I push, and you can try this also in your gym with a pull-up bar, like if you put your hand up to a pull-up bar and try to press up on it. If you push and get your body tight, like you're trying to shove yourself away from the pull-up bar or the door jamb or wherever you're at, you're going to feel a lot more power of how much pressure your hand is able to put into the door jamb. Now, if you did that exact same thing but shrug your shoulder and try to push on the door jamb, you're going to discover that the amount of pressure between your hand and whatever you're pushing on is not going to be as good. So it's almost like, what is the saying? Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups, he does earth downs. If you imagine instead that you're trying to, instead of pushing a kettlebell up, you're trying to shove yourself away from it, it'll get your shoulder down and help you press that kettlebell up over your head. This next cue I learned almost 2 decades ago from Dan John, and it has stuck in my head ever since. I was lucky enough to get to work with him very early in my kettlebell training, and he said a lot of things back then that have still stuck in my head. And one of those things is, well, let me just demonstrate it. Again, I don't want to use the heavy bell for this because it hurts to do it wrong. I'm going to use a light bell where I can be safer. A lot of times we'll see folks press like this. And we've seen pictures from certifications, and there's pictures of folks pressing out of my gym where they're here in the press. And the words from Dan John is, your neck is not your core. If you took your chin out of your chest, this opening is going to actually work its way through the entire part of your shoulder. And it's actually going to be less gummy. Like people with shoulder mobility issues, sometimes the lockout position feels funky to begin with. If you tuck your chin into your chest, you're going to feel even more pressure in that trap. So generally speaking, we'll tell people to look dead ahead. And right away, you're going to feel that tension that's in the trap just loosen up on you. If you've pressed a lot of kettlebells and you're comfortable doing this, this is more of an advanced move. You can also allow your eyeballs to follow the kettlebell. So you can look up slightly as you're pressing. This is also helpful for people who have very, very tight shoulders and real tight through their neck and their traps. This opening does help sometimes relieve some of that tension that's in the traps, and it can help your press feel a whole lot better. The last thing that I want to talk about today is stance. Now, this is not a hard and a fast rule. I'm going to give you guys some general advice that we like to see here, and then whatever subtleties you figure out is up to you. By the way, this exercise is usually referred to in most programs as the military press, and people wonder how it got its name. The reason the way the military press got its name is they used to press with this position, which is how the soldiers would stand. Their heels are touching, their toes are out slightly, and they would be in this position pressing. Now, this might be a little too tight for most people. Generally speaking, the way that I explain stance when you're trying to put weight up over your head is if you took all the sheetrock off of your walls at home and you could see the studs, I'm pretty sure, unless you had a really, really bad contractor, all of your studs would be straight up and down because this is the strongest structure to press out of. So, the strongest structure to put things on top of. So when they put your roof trusses on top of the studs, you want them right here. If all of your studs were put in like this, it's not going to be anywhere near as strong to put those roof trusses on there. So generically speaking, if you have mass over base, basically you could draw a straight line from your first 2 toes to your knees to your hips. For most people, this feels like a pretty good position to press out of. For some folks, it feels too narrow and they want to get out to maybe shoulder width apart. If you start getting much farther than that, you may discover that you're not as strong laterally as you would be if you had your feet directly underneath your hips. This might be something that you have to experiment with. And this may also have you shuffling your feet a little bit because if you like a real narrow position, obviously I can't clean the bell from this position. So I would have my swing set up for my clean, adjust for my press. Play with that foot stance and find the option that works best for you. Now, before we end, I want to leave you guys with one more quick idea that just came to me talking about the ideal foot position. One of the most common things at certifications when we have to fail somebody for their press test is at some point, you're not really pressing a kettlebell, you're doing a bent press. Like someone might get a couple reps that look really good, and then towards the end, they start leaning so much where it's almost like a bent press. Bent press also is like a push press. It doesn't count as a strict press. It's an exercise. It's just not a strict press. So I want to be careful here because at some point, like I press a pretty reasonably heavy kettlebell for a little guy like me. at some point there's too much kettlebell and not enough Jerry. And there is going to be some body English that is going to happen when I start pressing the weight. So I want to be careful with how much this is, how we judge this. So one of the simple ways to determine if you have too much body English is another exercise, which is called the half kneeling press. So I'll demonstrate that real quick. Again, I'm going to go to a lighter bell here. I'm going to come down to the bottom of a lunge. I don't want to be super wide here because that'll defeat the purpose. I actually want to get almost pretty close to an inline position. I've heard this taught both ways. The way I learned it was from Gray Cook. And what he says is the leg that is forward is the hand that is holding the bell. So you can use both hands to kind of do a cheater clean to get it up into position. And you can practice pressing out of this position. I just realized I grabbed it with my left hand, so that might have caused some noise in the mic there. Sorry about that. If you are pressing in, if you come out a little bit, it's going to be okay. But if you come way out, you're going to lose that half kneeling position. So this is just another practice drill that will help you determine, am I using too much body English or just the right amount? Well, guys, there you have it. Those are my basic cues for kettlebell pressing. Obviously, I have more things to say. There could be little cues and corrections that I could have thrown in this video, but I was trying to keep it brief to get you guys started on a good path. If you would like for me to take a peek at your kettlebell press, shoot a video of it from about a 45-degree angle and send it to me at the information down below. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our facility or more about our YouTube channel or anything else that we offer through our program, all that information is going to be down in the description. So thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you guys soon.